Hey there, everyone. It is Friday afternoon. It is 4:20 p.m. Smoke them if you got them. I'm going to assume you do. Do you got them, Dustin Kava? You got them?
Yeah, I always got them.
I got them. You got them. You got them for sure. You got them right now. It is 4:20 p.m. It is Friday afternoon. Wayward.media presents Because Cannabis. Hey, everyone. How are you doing? My name is BC Wayman. That's Dustin Kava. We both got them. Everyone, we both got them. So thank you for joining the show. I really appreciate it. Hey, do me a favor right now, right off the get, hit subscribe. Yeah, you do me a favor, hit subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Every show comes out Friday, 4:20 p.m. When you subscribe, you get the notification when the new show comes out. You get to find out if it's a guest show. You get to find out if it's Dustin and I flying around doing our thing. You get to find out if one of us couldn't find anyone and just fired up a microphone and decided to talk to you for 60 minutes. Yes. You hit subscribe right now. We would definitely appreciate it. Give us a follow. Wayward Media. A lot of new shows coming up. I know we keep talking about it, but I feel as we move into quarter 3 and 4 of 2022, it's about to happen. You feel, Dustin? We're like, it's one of those things. You ever watch The Price is Right, Dustin? I don't know. You're a little younger than I. You ever watch The Price is Right?
Have I ever watched The Price is Right?
Dumb question. Or have I ever watched The Price is Right? All right, we watch The Price is Right, which I, by the way, would imagine The Price is Right, fully medicated would be a fantastic show. That's all I'm saying. I feel like all that show, whether it's Bob Barker or Drew Carey, especially with that weird gray beard thing, he looks like you right now, like a gray version of you is what he looks like on the show. Who would have thought your mystique, your je ne sais quoi could be the host of The Price is Right compared to Bob Barker? Still,
I always did. And
yeah?
Plus he's right, from Parma. So I think, yeah, man.
Still close.
Close. I feel the lineage.
Anyway, what I was trying to say is I feel like our new shows at Wayward.media has been like one of the things on The Price is Right. That was the little mountain climber guy that just kept going up the mountain slowly. I think he did a little yodel thing as he was going. He was kind of going up the thing. That's where our announcements have been. They're just, it's the of the roller coaster. Like, we're still going. World's tallest coaster, right? We're still going.
Cliffhangers. The game is called Cliffhangers with the guy.
Oh, good for you. Props to you. That's a fist bump right there to you and to Dustin for knowing the name of that. You're probably right now in the comments. If you knew it, you should have been slamming your fingers in the comments, letting us know what it is. Anyway, subscribe to the show. Check out Wayward Media socially at MeetWM. We've got some great new shows coming up. I know that at some point they will launch. But today is Dustin and I, the two of us. We got some interviews coming up. We were just talking about it before we went live, Dustin. Got some great interviews coming up on Because Cannabis. But for episode 29, it's inside, it's inclusion. We're going to talk tours. We're going to talk going inside a facility. We'll talk a little bit about the 2023 Farm Bill, as well as inclusion in our industry. Dustin Kava, you ready to go? Anything you got to say before we get fired up? I feel like I just kind of stonewalled. I don't know what kind of word I was trying to say.
You just hit me with a train of a bunch of stuff. So I'm ready, man. I'm all aboard. Let's jump into this.
All right. Well, let me do this before we go any further. So we want to talk. I'm going to show in a minute. And if you can listen to the show, by the way, on an audio only version, whether it's iTunes, whether it's Google Play and all those places, we're available audio only. But if you want to catch the brand new show, including the videos, and we're going to play a video here in a second and talk about it, we're going to go inside a cultivation center. Dustin and I will comment along the way, kind of like an MST 3K cannabis tour version we're going to have going on, going inside. So if you want to see the new shows, they're every Friday, 4:20 p.m. on the Because Cannabis YouTube channel, part of Wayward.media. Dustin, have you been inside a large scale cultivation facility?
Yes.
Like a big boy.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me, as someone who has probably, and maybe you're listening, have been inside a small grow, maybe you got a little tent in your backyard, maybe you got a little tent in your basement or a little plant. What was, Dustin, your first impression? Can you remember? Can you take it back to the first time? Can you remember what your brain, what your eyes thought when you kind of pulled into the parking lot of a giant place, knowing that inside those doors was so much weed? Like inside of it was so much. What was that like as you kind of pulled the car, put it into park? You kind of take the breath, you kind of smell in the air, right? Like smell, it's a little scent. What was it like your first time?
You know what? Actually, my I'm not going to say which grow it was, but what we did was during the pandemic, we actually, with Trav Media Group, had a job shooting for Kenigma, a overseas education company in cannabis. They are actually pretty predominant overseas. Either way, what the job was we had to stage a bunch of different scenarios for stock footage for them to use in all their social posts and whatnot. So we turned inhalables into a dispensary. We took all the cases out of the store in the back and put them up front, and then brought actors in to actually interact with all the stuff. And, we had pounds of hemp from whole plant that we were shooting it with. And the same thing went for us needing to get inside a cultivation facility shots. And so, we had organized a company in Ohio to allow us in the facility to shoot some of the marketing as well for some internal marketing for their own stuff. And I remember pulling up to the building, and my first thought was, wow, this is really close to the road. like when you
such
have
a mundane thought,
right? And when you have that perception and that knowing of everything that's in that building, and then you realize it's only 6 parking spots from the road, you're like, wow, it's there's a lot going on there real close.
Yeah, like it's just a building, right? There is one I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, there's a few in Ohio that are like out in the middle of nowhere and such, but there's one I can think of that is in the middle of a very urban section, and it is kind of building, a little bit of a rundown building, cultivation center, another building, a bar, and they're all right there. Like you could right there, and you have no idea inside. You're like, what is that? And inside, so much weed. It's a weird feeling, man. It's just a really weird feeling pulling into there.
Yeah, it really was. But I love how each facility is set up unique in some way, and I like that they're all attempting something different. And I like that they're all bringing a little bit of, zest to eat themselves. I think it's cool.
It is cool. I haven't had a chance to be inside a lot of facilities yet, but I'm about to take my first tour. And that's kind of what made me think about this today. I'm about to take my first tour. We're going to Lighthouse Science. Shout out Lighthouse Science, East Lake, Ohio. They're actually a processing facility, so they're not a cultivation center, though I have one coming up for them as well, but we'll talk about that another day. So I'm going on a tour next week into Lighthouse Science in East Lake, Ohio. Full-scale processing center, solventless kind of extracting, really kind of cutting edge. They're very scientifically minded. They got the nano emulsion stuff going on. So I'm kind of excited and looking forward to it. But I have seen a few videos and stuff of tours, and I actually want to play one in a second. But I'll tell you a couple of things I'm most taken aback by, and I think people are surprised by when they walk inside a cultivation facility. First, sound and smell. Right? Both of those. You think you're familiar with the smell of cannabis, and you think that you understand like what all those fans and equipment is like, but it's loud. It is loud, and it stinks like cannabis, which really sounds like a duh moment, like a duh, but it really stinks like cannabis. Like everyone that I've talked to, for example, I used to work at Red Lobster. I was a waiter at Red Lobster. I would come home every day. My shirts reeked of fish, like every day. So much so that my wife would make me go to the basement, change and shower before I even come upstairs. Like literally put those straight into the laundry, wash those disgusting fish smelling pants, silly shirt, the apron, and I get those things off there. Same vibe, right? You just kind of stink like cannabis in there, and then it's loud. It's very loud. Were you surprised by kind of and it's very bright too, like all those bright lights really add up.
No, I'm never surprised about the sound. I think any type of agricultural facility, you'd be surprised, or even, a room full of chickens, or, it's like whatever it is, I'm always impressed at the amount of noise one company can make. And so with this, you almost are able to assume. I don't want to say assume. It's just like, I don't know. You just can't look at a facility with fans and all this stuff and think, wow, that must be quiet in there. So like, if you really are that awestruck about the noise, I think like you're missing a lot more than like, yes, there's a lot more.
Yeah, there is for sure. We use a lot of videos. Like I teach a class, commercial cultivation operations at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and we show a lot of different videos so people can understand, kind of what it's like inside the facility. One of the interesting things I always find and that people don't seem to appreciate or understand is the final few steps and their importance. And by the final few steps, I don't necessarily mean kind of drying, curing, and trimming. I mean packaging, like putting it into an actual package itself, whether you're doing it by hand or whether you're spending $80,000 to buy a machine that makes 4,000 pre-rolls an hour. How do you justify that? But it also makes 4,000 pre-rolls an hour, and pre-rolls have a huge markup potential, right? So are you buying machines? Are you having humans do it for quality control? Not just the packaging, but literally the packaging and then the shipping, the delivering. In most states, the cultivator delivers the cannabis to dispensaries, to processors, the quality control of that, right? All those things come into play as a cultivation center beyond just, hey, I got to grow it, right? Some of the early stage, and then in the early stage, which is shifting way more from obviously seed, which doesn't really happen inside. It's mostly hydroponics, but not even using clones, like doing, test tube, tubal propagation in there is really just where people are going. So there's a pretty cool video. Let's watch this. It's only like 5 minutes, but let's watch, and feel free if you want to tell me to hit pause or something. This is a video of New Jersey. All right, this is New Jersey's largest cannabis cultivation facility. It's a huge facility. And so throughout this video, I think they do a pretty cool job of showing everything that happens. We'll put a link to this in the article, but let's take a look at this, Dustin, and see what's happening here. So you got all these bags sitting there and stuff like that. 200 people working there. 100,000 plants inside that facility, right? Into there. You can just take a look at some of these things. I think right there, right? It just really amazes.
This holds all the main plants for all our strains that we take our clone cuttings from.
In production currently, we have roughly 24 strains or so. Completely housed, we have closer to around 40. And with each strain, we've got varying numbers depending on how many cuttings we can get off each type.
What do you think here, Dustin? So we got looks like an ebb and flood trough system set up. We got plants in pots going there. Look at the size of those stalks on those plants, by the way. Pretty stalky. They're running a drip system irrigation into them. I would imagine with a facility like this, they have a full-scale integrated fertigation system in there, probably recycling water from their dehumidifiers and doing stuff. It's a pretty cool setup. You probably these are probably flooding there. The water is going to drain down into a container, which is going to then push itself back into its water system again and be reverse filtered. It just always amazes me. Always so cool.
I always think about redundancy in these large scale facilities, and especially in something like this. I'm always surprised that they don't have more rooms. I'm always surprised at, like, should something ever happen in one of those large rooms with some type of anything, a pest or something crazy, like what happens to the entire operation, and I'm always interested to see more so the plans with that than anything else.
Yeah, it's definitely the quality control part, is very important. You're right. If you get a pest or if you get a fungus in an inside grow, and that's one of the issues with inside grow, right? They're not really leafy. They're very bud heavy, and those plants are really right up on top of each other. And so if you get something that spreads, like it just goes like wildfire, like definitely doesn't happen outside. So you got to be on top of it quality control wise. But the beauty of an indoor grow and a hydroponic setup, like what they're using, is complete control. And with this kind of budget, they have each room, and they probably have several flowering rooms, maybe a few vegetation rooms, are probably climate controlled to the decimal point, like each one. And they probably have different flowering rooms at different light setups and different humidities or different temperature settings that probably are just very precise and very exact when you get to something like this.
Those rows are very close together too. Like,
oh, sure.
Again, I'm always surprised. And a lot of it, do you think is best practice, or do you think is most yield, more cost-effective processes as opposed to what's safer, what's less risky, what's, anything else?
I think this setup here is best practices in large scale cultivation. Like, you go to any sort of greenhouse setting where they're growing blueberries or strawberries, and they are just on these giant rolling tables, right? So each of these are about 4 foot wide. This is a rolling table system, and they can walk between them and then move that whole table to the right and then walk between the next row, which allows them access to stacks of plants, like all the way down next to each other. So I think in large scale, it's about trying to fit as many plants in a finite space as possible. And so this is what they do with herbs, and this is what they do with cannabis, right? It just seems to make the most sense. So I think that's the other part of it, comes from just making sure you're on top of controlling the environment. Because if you can control the environment, you shouldn't have as much outbreak. But it happens all the time. Like, I think it happens to a lot of companies where they have massive outbreaks. I know a few off the top of my head. Spider mites and such is an indoor grow issue that they're not as familiar with as compared to a outdoor grow. But it's just, I think it's about that. In indoors, it's about quantity as well. Like, it's production. You're doing 6 harvests a year. You're always harvesting, a perpetual multi-wave harvest, right? You're always harvesting, always trimming, always drying. So it's just repetitive. So there's just so much quantity, right? Just so much quantity.
Right.
All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at the rest of this here.
Type of plants. So roughly in this room, we've probably got about 800 plants.
Okay.
So it's our job to maintain the health of the plants so that we get great cuttings, so that we get great new stock for our production. And that's the most important part.
We got to trim the bottoms of those. Like, they really are going top heavy there. In an indoor cultivation, they're bred strictly for bud. You try to get rid of as much leaf as possible.
They are genetic cuttings off of our mother stock. So we're basically recreating the exact same plant multiple times over. So they are stuck in rooting hormone and then placed in media cubes. And then from there, they are going to take about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to root. Once they're rooted, they move on to our vegetative process, which is the next step in the life cycle.
So we start in the beginning. A lot of people doing clones, tubal ligation, saving the genetics is a big thing right now. Save space in there.
This is our
and then you move into the bedroom,
which is short for vegetative. This is where our plants get transplanted into larger volume containers once they have rooted in their clone cube. In here, they'll stay about 3 to 4 weeks, fill out a root base to support the flower that we're going to grow in the next phase.
And I think part of the reason of showing this is I don't think people understood kind of the size of what this is, like the size of the operation and the staff involved and the amount of electricity and the amount of water
We're
you're
looking
spending.
at one of our 11 flower rooms.
11
we
flower
have roughly
rooms.
4,000 plants in each flower room. They spend
That's
about
45,000 plants.
Are harvested. So the plants that we
You
are
just looked
looking
at 4,000.
are fully mature and about a week and a half out from being harvested.
No leaves. Look at all that bud. That's how they're bred indoor, man. It's pretty impressive. Oh, hang dry for max efficiency. Try to get the plant all the way down. But now some people prefer.
So we are harvesting flower room 10.
Stop right here. I don't know if you know this, Dustin. Some people really get into and prefer to hang dry by cutting pieces off like they're doing. They cut pieces and sections off. And some purists would say, look, you have to take the entire plant and chop it from the base and let the entire thing hang down to go. Do you have a preference when it comes to your drying? These are all these things, by the way, much like anything you're consuming. If I'm having a cup of coffee, I have no idea where the coffee beans came from and how it was set up. But this is, in our industry, our customers, our patients.
Well, this is what separates the artisan and,
Sure.
the large scale op. And yeah, so I don't know. I think I always love that purist notion first, doing everything, but at the same point, this is a time scale thing. I don't think in their operation that it really matters whether you know what they do.
No, it is quite
And
simply
today,
a
this is our
manufacturing
harvest crew
operation.
behind me, who has chopped down a number of plants. They're now de-leafing, taking all the big leaf off before the plants
This
are
is good
moved into
product.
our dry room to be hung.
I mean, it's not
for
like
the dry
junk
phase
weed.
for
Yeah,
about
right.
7 to 10 days.
This is a high grade quality cannabis.
Wow.
Look at the detailed of inventory you would have to be able
This
to
is our
control.
multi-use vault. This is our storage area for flower in all different degrees, both packaged, ready to sell, and for processing and being packaged. So the shelf life of a flower product is somewhere between 6 to 9 months. There's no expiration date in the state of New Jersey, but for the most
Ohio's
part, for
14, by the
oil-based
way, from date of
products,
harvest.
we're looking at about a lifespan of 6 months.
Year from the date of harvest. So we'll do this. So Ohio, by the way, she just mentioned how there's no expiration date on cannabis in the state of New Jersey. And Ohio, for example, has 1 year from the date of harvest as their expiration date. So
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have seen inside a facility before. I think that's something. There's a lot of great videos, but that's a great one. We'll put that link to that from NJ.com, NJ.com, premier news website from New Jersey, I would imagine. I don't know. NJ.com. So if you haven't seen inside a facility, I think it's pretty cool. I think people don't realize large scale cannabis and what it looks like. I think they still picture that the stuff they're consuming when they buy it from any cultivar Curaleaf or from cookies or any of these other things, that it's grown by some dude in the backyard. And I'm like, no, it is grown like your bananas and things. Like that is what all the vegetables and all the produce you buy at the grocery store, that's what it looks like. Same as your cannabis. Doesn't mean it's bad, but know that your cannabis is not grown by someone that looks like Dustin sitting in the corner with a pair of AirPods in, listening to lo-fi hip hop. It's not how it works, right? It is grown by 176 people, man. That just always impresses me. All right, Dustin, I'm going on this tour. Anything I should or should not do? Like, obviously, don't steal. Don't take product. Don't smoke on site. What are my do's and don'ts, do you think, of going? I can't geek out, right? I can't be like, oh, my gosh, like, show me all this stuff. What do you think? How should I play my upcoming tour? What are some do's and don'ts when I walk in there?
I always saw them get a little bit like cringy when they see the beard and all the hair, and they're like, God, we got to get this guy a full
I feel like
suit
you
and,
walking in is a whole different me. I'll be probably dressed in a polo shirt and sensible slacks, probably casual canvas shoes because I'm hip and young at 48. That's my uniform. Look at me. It's my uniform of choice, good sir. I believe you walk in, they're either going to hand you a resume or an application or be like, bro, you can't get product. This isn't like one of those beer tours. I did a round when I used to live in Columbus by the Anheuser-Busch Brewery, and we used to go there and would pay, it was $0.25. You get to go through and walk the free tour and get up to $2, which is 8 little shots of beer on the thing. We did it like 4 times in a row. It's not like that. You don't get free cannabis on the tour. There's not even a gift shop on the end. It's just cool to see. So don't take any product. Don't geek out. I think I'm going to be okay appearance wise. I think they'll,
I think it's anywhere, it's any industrial facility, you know, like when I go to say a car manufacturer, like I'm staying in my lane. I know that there are machinery. I know that there are people doing their job. I know that I'm not there to touch anything. I'm not there to, I'm really not even there to ask any employee any question. I'm there to be told everything.
I like that. There to be told. That's a good point. Like you're not there, like you're there to learn, and there's obviously room for questions, but that's I've never really considered a great mentality when you're in a place, in a tour, trying to learn from someone. There to be told. I gotta remember that mantra. I like that.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, there's just the basic etiquette things too, like cleanliness when you walk into these facilities. Like obviously you hear that fear and that type of redundancy and that risk adverse type of processing in my head. It's no different walking in. Like, you know, if they ask you to suit up, be conscious of the why. If they, you know, like I just think that there's always a lot more risk allowing other people in the facility that are not used to being there and don't understand all the procedures. And again, when you're dealing with plant matter and stuff like that, like I think I believe that, you know, it's important to just be mindful of it.
Speaking of being mindly of plant matter, did you know, Dustin, we are on the precipice? That's like 4 times I've overused that big fancy word today. I just saw some movie recently where some guy uses some fancy word, and he says basically only assholes use fancy words. So I'm an asshole.
Yeah, me too.
On the precipice of the 2023 Farm Bill. Do you know why that's of significance to our industry, Dustin? Drop some knowledge on me.
Okay, I mean, outside of just always defining defining how many licenses, there's always every new farm bill, there's always a new issuance of expansion into the hemp licenses. I also, outside of that, I just think it's a yearly thing that designates, certain stuff in the industry. I've noticed that it was important for the head shop, but it was always just defining the rules in certain ways just to make sure I can continue doing what I've always been doing. So I never felt like I was hanging on the farm bill to really, move forward.
Well, maybe right now, maybe as more cultivators have an understanding of it. Let's go back in time. So the Farm Bill comes out every 5 years, So every 5 years, the Farm Bill comes out. And really why it matters to us in cultivation, to you, as anyone who's concerned about cannabis, as anyone who consumes cannabis, like if you are a fan of cannabis and hemp, if you are a fan of Delta 8, if you buy plant pref products from Whole Plant and Alex Huska, or any of those great people that make Delta 8, Delta 10, if you're into HHC, if you are into CBD, if you are into anything that is less than 0.3% Delta 9 tetra, and O matter very much in this terminology. Tetrahydrocannabinol. It matters, right? So the 2014 Farm Bill, why that matters really in our industry is that's the first time that in a long time, right? So we had the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, which created this whole weird inclusion. And then you had the CSA, the Controlled Substance Act of 70, which put cannabis on Schedule 1. It's where it sat until, drum roll, please, the 2014 Farm Bill, which is when scientifically they started this research process. So the 2014 Farm Bill is when hemp and when CBD became excluded from what we can think of as Towley saying, you guys want to get high, like that cannabis, right? That even though we'd had medicinal cannabis since 1996, when it went legal, right? When Colorado and Washington passed these, part of that was saying what exactly get you high? What exactly gets you high? And part of the 2014 Farm Bill was the magic number. I like to call it the magic number. I don't know if it's really like a magic number, but it's kind of a magic number. Do you know what the magic number I'm talking? It's not 420, Dustin. It's not 420. I know that was your first answer. What's the magic number I'm talking about?
0.3%.
0.3%. You are exactly correct. Ironically enough, here is an article. This is on Bluebird Botanicals. So this talks about the 0.3% because we've talked about it before on the show. We've mentioned the 0.3%. And so I wanted to educate myself, educate you, by the way. What exactly does the 0.3%? Where did it come from? Is it this thing that less than 0.3% gets you high, which is what people tend to think? But that's not really what it is at all. In fact, and it was started by, there was a different paper that had come out back in the 1970s. It was based off leaf versus resin. And so if you kind of look at this, what they really described was Delta 9 THC, less than 0.3% dry weight of upper younger leaves, and usually less than half of the cannabinoids of resin or the other way. So basically, and they called it sativa and indica, but though it doesn't really clarify it. And so people kept pushing Dr. Small, which is the person who came up with this. People keep asking based off the 0.3%, like, is that where it's the high limit? And it's not. He's very clear. That is where, whether they called it sativa, which in his definition meant a more hemp fibrous version of the plant, or whether they called it indica, which in his version means the more likely to reproduce or produce, I should say, a psychoactive effect and get you high. Like that's where that was at. And so the 2014 Farm Bill used this report from the I think it was from 1970. Where does it say it right there? 1976. So from the 2014 Farm Bill, they based it off this number, off this report that was come up by this Dr. Small here from Cornell University. And that is where that sat. But here's what's weird, right? And I don't think that the industry had any clue how over the next few years it would turn. So the 2014 Farm Bill introduced scientific research. over the last 5 years from 14 to 18. Things happened. They did research. They decided, sure, less than 0.3% should be more applicable. In the 2018 Farm Bill is when we finally got, and this is probably where it affected your head shop. That is where inhalables.com, inhalables _, on Instagram, little shout out to them. That is where we began to see sales. Like CBD prior to 2018 was in some, seedy little head shop. Not yours, clearly, because you're not inhalables. What is it? Seedy little head shops, gas stations, things like that. In 2019, CBD and moving forward is available in anywhere you go. I can't think of a place that doesn't have CBD, and that's all because of the 2018 Farm Bill. So this 2014 introduced research, 2018 introduced sales. The last 4 years, going on 5 now, have spent, Dustin, exploiting it. We've had multiple people on already, Alex Huska and some other people who have gotten into the exploitation, let's be honest, what it is, of that law, of that loophole, of that 0.3% line, Delta 9, oops, hit my mic too many times, get fired up about this, Delta 9.3%. And so that's that number. And that is what allowed all this science. It's really cool though, right? I don't think the government ever saw it coming. I mean, you talked about the head shop. Did you picture when you heard, hey, this CBD might be legal, that in a few years you'd be able to sell products, right? Shout out to plantpuff.com. We'll give them a little love. Sell products, Delta 8, by the way, people. Sell products in your store that people could consume. I mean, that's crazy.
I don't know. I mean, we're also coming, I come from, the head shop game where we were battling the bath salt industry, so yes, in certain regards, I assumed exploitation of the hemp flower was actually going to be common. What I assumed was that they would be taking the base hemp bud and then sprinkling the synthetic, whatever the hell, on top of it. So you would get that consistency in that base for it, and then whatever additive is getting you the thing. So in certain regards, that is what's happening today. Even it's a cannabis derived thing. It's not like a research chemical like JWH018 or something that is similar to cannabis.
What is that? It feels like some alien thing. What's JWH018?
Oh my gosh, this was a bath salt back in the day that was meant to mimic cannabinoids, but at the same point only affected one of the 2 receptors in the brain. Yeah. And so the problem with it was that when the one that would get over flooded, which was possible, the other one didn't. And that's what actually induced death, because when both receptors are flooded, that's when your body gets put to sleep. When one receptor is hit to the max, that's when some dangerous shit starts happening. So, research chemicals and those synthetic cannabinoids at the time were pretty damn scary. And I'm actually still wonder at how much research has gone into like the THCOs and stuff like that to make sure that that's happening right.
Oh, here's a number put in hand form. Oh, 0. If you're not watching on this brand new show on Fridays at 4:20 p.m., if you didn't subscribe, if you're listening on audio only, I am putting a hand symbol up that says 0. I don't know if that's 100% factual, but I can tell you it is less than 0.3%.
In the United States, I will say it's 0. I bet you, Israel. My hope was that Israel exactly would have been the ones that we could be getting some of this data from early.
Yeah, Dr. Hamant Bid, you get out there over into Israel and over there. No, that's where, he talks about growing up overseas and just the plant grew and they just researched it. That's why he's so advanced where he is now, because in his home country, it's just a thing. It's like a thing that they study and talk about. It's very different than this. We had to get to the Farm Bill. We had the 14 Farm Bill and the 18 Farm Bill just to get there. And the reason I bring that up, Dustin, is we are on the verge, as I said earlier, about the 2023 Farm Bill. In the 2023 Farm Bill, as is the prior 2 farm bills, is going to talk some hemp. It's going to have some hemp stuff into it, including, and this may be the biggest one, the THC threshold is going to move from, if this is proposed, right? So this is all just proposed. This is from an article. This article is on the, where's that here? It's a long, complicated website. We'll have to put it up to there. It's a legal blog talking about it. And so what they talk about is the Hemp Improvement or Hemp Advancement Act, which is what they think this would be based on. So the first key takeaway, 0.3% goes to 1%, right? That's an interesting note there. And then the rest of it actually is about improving more hemp ownership. It talks about removing some of the weights for time for people to get licensing. It talks about removing some of the penalties for licensees, whether it's drug-related felonies and convictions. It talks about removing the background checks requirements. It talks about lowering fees for hemp testing versus THC testing. So part of the now, once again, proposal for the 2023 Farm Bill is taking a look at hemp, really making it easier for you to grow. Like a lot of people, if you want to grow cannabis, it's hard to grow THC. It's way cheaper and easier to grow hemp. So it's making it easier for you to grow hemp. But they are talking about raising that limit, which I'm not shocked by. I'm not shocked at all that they're finally catching up with us.
I think a couple things. I've never seen the Farm Bill hurt hemp farmers.
Correct.
So,
it's because in
every single way, it's always about making sure that there are protections in place as a business for our hemp farmers. Ohio has them, Kentucky has them, all these states have them. The secondary effect, I would say, is a lot of that 0.3% to 1% change doesn't necessarily change the final product, but what it does is it means that when someone comes up to a big 100,000 acre farm that is growing hemp and plucks one plant off the thing to test it and then goes after to pull down the entire farm, which has happened in New York, that allows the farmer that extra variance in plant, I think, to not have the entire $3 million worth of seed.
Oh shit, you are right. You know what's funny? All those points that we just pulled up on that article, we'll put the link to the article in the description below. All those points I thought were positive for hemp farmers, but now that you explained it to me, you're correct. That's also, I think, a positive for hemp farmers because of that variance being so strict. And the reality is if you're producing this plant for the fibrous material, I mean, it's not as consumable. It's not as smokable. It's not the same vibe. We have a giant at our Cleveland School of Cannabis. We have these big bins of processed hemp.
Well,
it looks
and
like
they're done
dirt.
closer.
I mean, it just looks.
I mean, like if you could imagine that, like, they're placed in rows into such a way that they're not meant to get that big. They're not meant to flower in the same way. Like you're chopping them all down at once in the same way, and just processing it for fiber. If you're doing an outdoor grow for flower, then the spacing is like exponentially greater. But still, yes, I honestly, like, I think a lot of the Farm Bill is going to set up things like interstate commerce laws, which will prevent, cops from, allowing the transfers of hemp material through the state. I've seen the bastardization of law enforcement over the hemp in so many different ways. And I think in a lot of different ways, the businesses themselves certainly need a little bit more standing to be able to tell these cops, like, listen, this is what you're saying is actually much larger than what you assume. And if I do go to court, this is actually very dangerous. This is not a thing that they take lightly, is, impeding business and commerce across state lines. It's actually funny when I think of most laws where as a business, I have literally the most protection of all. It's that no state, if I was transferring glass between states and some states stop me, that is a very, very, very big federal issue that would be going up against the state for them impeding that business. And I've watched some high-powered companies really do some numbers on local jurisdictions because they try to do that. And the federal government does not take lightly against, impeding business.
No, it does not. The state-to-state stuff is interesting. Actually, just driving around with hemp is interesting. Have you ever driven around with pounds and pounds of hemp? I have, by the way.
Actually, when inhalables, because of inhalables, and I'm not, shout out to some of the amazing officers that were in Brunswick, because there were quite a few of them that just, after the years of watching us grow, started to respect us. We started to respect them. But I would say that once every 6 weeks or so, when I would pull out of the shop parking lot in the middle of the night, I would get pulled over and they would always search the car. And so I got the amazing idea, why not just start sticking a 1/4 pound of hemp in the car so that every time when they pull me over, I just pull out this huge ass bag that's like, you must be smelling something, huh? Like, are we really gonna pay the $250 to test this hemp, and you'd be like made to look like a fool? Because again, I'm tired of this. And here's the, so yes, I have, and I will continue to drive around with hemp.
Here's the question though: have you ever driven around with 4 pounds of hemp in a vehicle that had marijuana on the side of it? Because your boy did just this past weekend. That's right. I drove around this very vehicle this past weekend with pounds of hemp in it. And so I had to go through this. I know it's so fun. CSEeducation.com. A little shout out to the Cleveland School. Yeah, that is what I drove around all day Saturday. First of all, a couple of things I learned. So true. A couple of things I learned when you get behind a vehicle that is covered in cannabis leaves and has marijuana really big written on the side of it. I sent that picture to my dad and he's like, wow, not conspicuous at all. I'm like, no. So you don't even pack your Plant Puff Delta 8 pen when you're driving around that thing for any sake. But ironically, we're moving some hemp product from Chagrin Valley Hemp Company to the Cleveland School of Cannabis. And so I had to go through with them, like basically a safety training course of all the different certificate of authenticities and letters. I have like basically a binder with me, and then stampage, and then sealed bags. We had to go through this. I felt like the beginning of some movie where some guy's getting like all checked into a secure base and they're going through this whole training. It was like a training montage, but I was very thankful because once again, I did not get pulled over, which I didn't get pulled over in that thing. But I was this whole training seminar of how to transport this product, especially in a van. That giant on the side of it says there. So I was just, it was interesting to carry that. I felt both confident because I had the stickers with the bags and they were sealed, and I had several letters on me, but I was scared shitless. Like I was just really nervous about what am I going to do? I actually was the whole time like, I don't know where the insurance is. Like, where's the registration? That's the practical things I was thinking of. Like, I don't even know where the registration is. These people I had my business cards on me. I was hoping that's what was going to do. So I don't know. We should get me and you in that van. I feel like you in that van definitely gets pulled over.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Or more likely.
Except I'm probably just not going to wear pants when I drive that thing around, so that when they do pull me over, I just step out of the car like, what's the matter, sir? It's hot in here.
Yeah, that is the if you're listening in audio, the Cleveland School of Cannabis marketing van. Check it out on our Facebook page. Actually, I was at an event, Dustin, this weekend. I think we talked about it on the last show, so we got to go to it where I was driving that van. The Midwest Cannafest 2 took place at Ridall Green Partnership in downtown. Well, it's actually in Euclid, Ohio. They're just this great urban farm that the gentleman from Ridall, don't forget soilbros.com. It's a great documentary on the fellows that started Ridall Green Partnership. Had their Allie Reeves putting together this amazing event celebrating diversity, celebrating inclusivity into the cannabis industry. You know, we know that it's a bunch of people that look like me in there. And so getting more men or more women into there, more African-Americans, more different genders and different sexual orientations, you know, just really kind of putting there a lot of different panels and such. So it was really exciting to have. It was cool to be at, and I've done a couple, but never on the vendor side, a place where everyone's just talking about it openly, right? There was a bunch of security, but it smelled like cannabis the whole day around the facility. I had the greatest jalapeno jerk chicken wrap. It was $17, by the way. It came with too much money, but it was amazing. Food trucks, your prices are a little over ridiculous, but it was amazing. Just being honest. Lots of free swag. I got a lot of free stuff, a lot of free hemp products being handed out there.
I think it's Allie. I think it was recently Allie's birthday.
It was August 20th. She's also a Leo, like your boy here. August 16th is my birthday for that. So it was fun. It was fun to see that. And that's one of those big things, right? When cannabis becomes legal, we try to get more diversity. We try to get more ownership. And there was a cool article. I don't know if it's a cool article. I don't think the results are cool, but I think it was a honest article on leafly.com recently. Leafly.com, great website for cannabis information, talking about the Illinois social equity laws. You know, a lot of states, when they legalize, social equity is kind of a calling card. It's a talking point that they put out there. We're going to have all these licenses available. When you look at states like Michigan and Massachusetts and California that are promoting micro marijuana business licenses, which are once again aimed at social equity, they aimed at people with different varieties of backgrounds and such. And so when Illinois went live right? When they went live, and they have these quotes in the article, right? The most equity-centric law in the nation, from the press release from the governor, like Illinois is a leader in policy and a model and what cannabis reform can look like. And then right after that, it basically says there were, within the first 2 years of the program, 0 minority-owned dispensaries and operations, and which so much so that they had to pass a new law, because every single company, if you take a look at the very next paragraph on this article from leafly.com, every single dispensary in Illinois is at least a multi business operator. There is no small business independent owners of dispensaries in the state of Illinois, despite the fact that they have 160 some dispensaries, despite the fact that they put crazy amount of information to try and get more equity, despite the fact that they had a tremendous amount of lawsuits coming up into that. They just really never were able to make it happen. So, which is what happens, right? It happens in a lot of these states that go legal. They promise these social equities. It happened here in Ohio. They were going to lower the scoring. They were going to change it so that we could get more diverse ownership. Right? It didn't really happen. It doesn't happen again and again and again, which I think people lose faith in that, And so I think it's interesting what Illinois is trying to do. They're still trying to push equity. They're still trying to encourage applications. They started the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. I mean, there's all these things that are happening, but much like a lot of things that have happened in our industry, just kind of these false promises from there.
Yeah, in fact, I was just reading an article about the social equity problems in Arizona. Actually, one of our Trav Media Group clients, Bianchi and Brandt, a lawyer group in Arizona, they actually were just quoted in an article talking about the exact same thing. I think that, it should have been clear from the very beginning that the ones that were most affected by the obtuse laws that were created in the past should probably be the ones to be entered into the market to begin with off the rip. And it certainly doesn't happen in most places. If you were to think of any one particular state or city that does it right, can you think of any off the top of your head? I think I got one in my head that I've been thinking about for a few years now. They were the first one I'd ever heard of actually making a specific initiative at a city level and actually following through with it, if I can remember correctly.
I'll give one right now, only because I just heard from 2 people that are in the area. Massachusetts is really trying hard. And I had 2 students recently in the Harrington Institute, which is powered by the Cleveland School of Cannabis. So the Harrington Institute from Massachusetts, both of them have their social equity micro marijuana license pending. Like they've both passed all the things. And they were talking about how really supportive like the application process was, how really supportive the state was. I guess I don't know what the name of their organization is. Like in Ohio, it's the Medical Marijuana Control Policy. So whatever their overarching board of cannabis law in Massachusetts has been really proactive to get more licensees in there of diverse backgrounds. So that's the one I would think of. I know Michigan has tried really hard too, but the 2 M's, that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, thinking of Massachusetts, I want to shout out my boys. Again, another client from Trav Media Group that we work with. We're currently
shout out to Trav Media Group. Look at Trav Media Group. Let's give them a quick plug, by the way. Where's their website? Put it in the link. We'll have to put it in the comments.
Yeah, well, I'll put it in the comments at travmediagroup.com. But we're actually building Nimbus Vapor, a large, concentrate and flower company out in Massachusetts. So that website should be going live here in a couple weeks. But thinking back to citywide, I believe my first time ever hearing of an initiative to do that citywide, I think was in Portland. And I thought that they had made pretty amazing strides, even saying so that X amount of licenses and stuff like that, I believe had to come from certain. It was demanded, like we're not giving this license away otherwise. Or I think it might even been one of the very first places that I heard to actually specifically seek out people who had felonies for possession of the plant and allow them to have some of the first dibs on licenses and stuff like that. So it was that way of saying, like, this has negatively affected you for your entire life because of what happened over this. And if anybody was to own a dispensary or, a transportation company, it should be you.
Yeah, right. It is pretty interesting. I hope it gets better. I mean, I think that's the key. I think the problem is you have these states come out and they talk about it and they promote it, and it just always seems to, right? It just always seems to fall a little flat for them. So I think we need a state, continue to kind of push that, continue to kind of just keep pushing it forward. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope it gets better. Obviously, I think things like the 2023 Farm Bill, maybe getting state to state exportation, maybe these things would also be more helpful. I mean, all these different restrictions into there, but I would also think, and I don't know, we always talk about THC. I would be curious about the percentages of inclusion, I guess maybe the diverse percentage of ownership in hemp farms, right? Because of the price point to entry, which in most states licenses, and every state that has legal hemp growing has some sort of overarching committee. Ohio's is Senate Bill 57, which made, hemp legal and set up all the rules and regulations for hemp growth and CBD growth. So I would imagine, and I'd be curious to think, do you think hemp has a higher, or do you think hemp is closer, or do you think it's probably still similar in numbers and data points to THC ownership?
I actually think it's less.
Oh, you think it's less?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we got to push more ownership ideas and for people to think about the many, many, many uses besides the THC 8 and 10s and CBDs that you can do with the plant. I mean, maybe that's the selling point. Maybe we stop this, like smoke it, medicinal or adult use version. And maybe we really push on a diverse level. We got to get some smarter people than us on the show to talk about this. Maybe we push on a diverse level to get that, like to really make diverse ownership in hemp. I mean, imagine that if we could have that overtaken, that would be awesome.
I think I see diverse ownership within hemp within the actual products. So I think about like beauty lines. I think about
Good point.
Stuff like that. And
pet stuff.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But when I actually think of, soil, plant matter, equipment, no, I don't. I also think that I'm really curious at the percentage of farms out in the open air, like outside as opposed to inside cultivators of hemp for flower. And where exactly, like, are we talking 300 acres? Are we talking just, 30,000 square feet? And what that ratio is between the two of them within the industry as well.
I bet you right now it's closer to the latter. I bet you right now the majority of hemp farm is small scale. I'm sure there's some big boys out there that are growing it, but I would think the vast majority is 2,000 square feet or less. I would think it's smaller. Like, I think it's really small, especially here in Ohio. I can't speak for some other areas. I know you get down into like South Carolina and Kentucky, which are promoting themselves as like hemp farm area, right? They're super conservative. They're not all in on THC, but they are saying, look, we will grow the shit out of hemp. We will grow the shit out of CBD down that area. They got great soil right in the base of the Appalachian Mountains and such like that. So you get a lot of even some of the water coming in from the Atlantic Ocean, hurricanes and shit, making that really soil really rich for that. Same way it works over in the West Coast. You get the nice salt water in there, adds that natural minerals to that soil. So I think they probably have some large scale farms. I'm going to go stereotype some demographics from Kentucky and South Carolina though. So it's probably there, but I think you'll see more. I think you'll see more. It hasn't really hit the Midwest yet. I know Oklahoma's in their thing, but it really hasn't hit. I think at some point though, there will be giant hemp farms. Like I can think of driving through Ohio. We got big soybeans and corn. I can drive down not too far from where you're at, Dustin, and it's just miles of corn, right? Just growing out of the ground. I think you're going to see that someday in hemp, right? I mean, why not? As the fiber becomes more important, as the fiber becomes more useful, as more people realize that. And then you look at both the raw material and then the ability to grow it for flour and the different consumables. Yeah, I think someone, if you got it, it's a plant to put on the land and relatively, I don't say it's cheap to grow. It takes a lot of nutrients and such, but that should be the entry point. I think we need that. I think I would do it more. And you got people, as we talked about, the aforementioned Riddle, which is, teaching that in an urban area, small scale greenhouses. You don't have to have a giant facility, which gives you that boutiqueness, right? And that's the cool. You can grow, and the beauty of hemp growth is you can grow your own plant, process your own plant, and then sell your own beauty product. Like
I actually, to shout out to Lily Farms in Virginia and in the Suffolk area, they actually did some really cool things where they would invite everybody out to the farm for kind of a get together at the end of the season, and you would go out and actually cut down the flower, and which would be dried for you and packaged and everything later on, and
That's
then given to you
cool.
at another date. And so it was like a family thing, you know, like it was almost like you're going out to pick your strawberries, but you were picking your hemp for
I like
the
that.
season. And I think that there's a lot more potential to bring in the community. And I think that the minority groups do a better job at inclusion in and of itself. And I think that that's where they're really going to be able to shine.
I like that.
So I'm pretty excited about that concept, or that, you know, that possibility.
I think there's a state, Oregon, I believe, is the state that is going to experiment. This is more the THC line, just before we end the show here. Oregon is experimenting with, I believe, farm to table THC growth and then consumption. So you have that kind of concept. Not quite picking your own apples, but I love the idea of going and picking your own hemp plant and being able to just take it home and do what you want. That's so cool. So Oregon is experimenting with, like right now, I can drive down not too far from me and I can buy some maize sweet corn. Right, Ohio, famous for its sweet corn, maize farm, big farm here in Northeast Ohio. I can drive right down there. There's like it's in a furniture store parking lot, get some maize sweet corn, right? You can't do that typically with cannabis, but I think as you get more craft, more boutique, more artisan, as you referred to it earlier, cultivation, and obviously a state like Oregon, which is very, you know, you already talked about Portland, very forward thinking, had legal cannabis for quite some time, both on adult use and medicinal level. So that farm to table aspect, like that's going to be badass. Like, I don't know. We don't have time to get into it today, but that would be badass to walk into a place and just be like, yeah, let me take that. And literally some guy can pluck it off the thing and then kind of make something. I don't know. I don't know where it's at. I guess you got to let it dry a little bit. I don't know. I can't think through the process. There's a step involved there, but it's cool as shit to be able to think that that's something that could be coming your way in your lifetime. Like in your lifetime, Dustin, a 21, 22, 23, hell, a 30, I don't know how old you are, about a 30-year-old Dustin probably never pictured farm to table cannabis sales, yet a whatever your age are now, it's probably a reality in the next couple of years.
30.
Is that how old you are? Oh my God, I feel, are you really only 30 years old?
No, I'm 30. Oh God, 35. 30.
Ah, there you
35.
go. All right, that makes me feel a little better. I just turned 48. That's what we're doing. Ages out there for that. So I think it's cool. I didn't think I'd see it in my lifetime, and you didn't think I'd see it in yours, but both of us are getting it. If you want to get a brand new show, a brand new Because Cannabis every Friday, if you want one, make sure you hit subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Make sure you give us a like, hit the little up button onto there. Leave a little comment, leave a little rating. If you're listening on audio, same thing. Give us a follow, give us a rating, give us anything. We'd really appreciate it. Wayward.media, that's who produces the show. That's who presents Because Cannabis. A lot of great shows coming up in the future. I'm very excited for what we have going on. We got more cannabis shows. We got crypto shows, always marketing shows, Lord of the Rings shows, all these things in possible production. So Wayward.media, lots of great shows. Because Cannabis on YouTube, at MeetWM is our social feed. We'll put links to all the great websites and such that we talked about in the show today in the comment section. Dustin, episode 29 in the books, Inside and Inclusion. What you got on tap, man? Anything else exciting before we go?
No, I just wanted to appreciate the guy listening right now.
Hey,
and thank you.
Thank you. Make sure you hit subscribe, though, because you want to find out what's coming up. We got a lot of, it's been, I think 1, 2, 3. I think this is our 4th in a row that was just me and you. I've enjoyed it. But Dustin, and I don't know if you're down with this, I think it's time to enter into an open relationship and bring someone else in. So we're going to have some guests coming up. I know it's going to be awkward. Basically a rotating set of people I'm bringing into this relationship. We got some interview shows, a slew of interview shows coming up. So looking forward to that. Very excited for that. I hope you're okay with that, Dustin. We've had it before. Open. We closed our relationship for the last month. We're about to open the world back up to some more great guests, some more great interviews here on Because Cannabis from Wayward.media. So I'm excited for that. Dustin, next time I talk to you, we'll have someone else in this room. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. Dustin, thank you as always. Every Friday, 4:20 p.m., a brand new Because Cannabis show. That means we'll see you guys next Friday. Take care.